Alright, what's up everyone, it's Goose. We're gonna go over the GT-1000 maximum amp model. Boss describes this as a modded Marshall of sorts, so in my mind I'm thinking like Friedman. It definitely kind of has that vibe to it. Today we're gonna go over some of the tones that this amp is capable of, and also go through some of the intricacies, because there's a lot of cool things about this amp. And I actually own a Friedman, so we're going to compare it a little bit. Alright, so modded Marshalls are used by so many artists in the industry. When people talk about things like JCM 800s or any of the Plexi style modded amplifiers, the idea with the modded Marshall is usually either to give it more gain or to give it less spikiness in the high end, or tighten up the low end. I actually think this amplifier can do kind of all those things, which is really nice. But first, let's get into the EQ. This amp model, the way that I have it set, I actually have everything running a little bit above noon. I have a little bit more bass. It seems like it tries to be really tight. So if we move this down to just 12 o'clock on bass. This is with no boost or anything. It's already really tight. It's a very, very tight tone already. If you want to add some grunt to it, I usually bump it up to about 75. And you get like, it's still tight, but it has just a slight bit more impact. Now the mids are kind of cool too. Around noon is perfect for me. If you scoop the mids, you can actually get some really cool tones with that. And with that, I'd actually increase the gain by a little bit. You get a really cool tone with the mid scoop too, and it doesn't sound completely scooped, which is kind of nice. It just kind of changes the character and the openness of the mids. I actually really like that. However, I do like it just around noon. My personal tastes. Usually with treble knobs, they can get really harsh, like the Bogner that I tried in this GT-1000, but this treble can actually go all the way and still be usable. So we actually get the treble to 100. Actually, yeah, the low strings sound really, really good with the treble all the way up. I keep the treble around 65. Kind of gives me the best of both worlds. You get a smoother treble, but then if you need the like bite of a lower string, this actually gets you there. The present style for me is where you can actually get really either modern or vintage. So if you move the presence to about 30 or 40-ish, you can get like a really cool like vintage tone. Yeah, and I think that works super well for that. I actually have the presence for high gain pretty high up there, and you'll hear that it's just a lot more clear and just a lot more like in your face. So this amp runs a gamut between vintage and modern and anything in between really, really well in my opinion. This amp does a really good job with being sensitive to your picking dynamics. But first, let's add a boost. So I'm going to use this Governor DS, which I'm guessing kind of like a Marshall Governor like sort of pedal. Adding it as like a little bit of a boost in the front end of the amp. I'm also going to add the EQ that I usually do. So I'm actually high cutting a little bit. Adding a little sparkle to the top, and then cutting a little bit of the mids. You can see the settings right here, and this is what it sounds like. It's a very like crunchy sound, but what's nice is that if I wanted to, I could actually pick really lightly and get more of a crunch tone, or I could pick really heavy and get a metal tone. You can actually soften up your palm mutes a little bit and make this thing sound more along the lines of something more pop punk and less metal, if you so choose, and you can send it back into metal territory if you really want to, just by picking a little bit harder, which is something that I can't do very well with a lot of the other amps that I've tried. So like the rectifier or the Bogner, those tend to just stay completely distorted all the way. Just always metal or kind of fuzzy if you don't hit hard enough. This one kind of just gives you the like cleaner tone if you don't pick that hard, and then you get the distorted tone if you pick harder. So it's really, really nice. All right, so next up in my loop, I actually have my Friedman Runt 50. And I'm going to use the unmodded settings because I have it modded, but it's not going to be using any of those settings. We're just going to run it straight with the boost turned on in the amp and all the EQ somewhat close to where I have the amp EQ on the Maxima model. And we're just going to do a back-to-back comparison. So in my opinion, they're actually remarkably similar. There's a bit of a difference in the high end for the Maximum versus the Friedman. And again, the Maximum was never said to be a Friedman. It was just kind of a modded Marshall without the top end. It was just kind of a modded Marshall. So it's not going to be exact, but it's super close, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was at least a little bit of influence. And the other thing is that the low end is just super like similar feeling when you're playing. When you're hitting the lower notes of a riff, it just really feels similar, and I can't really explain that over camera too easily, but it's really, really interesting how close it is. And I know that Boss has been doing a lot of work into trying to make their amps feel good, and kudos to them. I think they did a good job with this one. All right, let's go over some lead tones. Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about the lead tone. It sounds amazing, it sounds cutting, it sounds smooth at the same time. This amp model was not an amp model I was expecting to like as much as I did, and when I started putting effects on it and boosts and everything, it took all of that and just made it as clear as possible, and it still sounded super tight and not piercing at all. So well done, Boss. I think this is one of the best models in the GT-1000, and if you like that modded Marshall tone, this is going to be your ticket in my opinion. I know I'm praising this a lot. Any of the actual other complaints that I have are more about the GT-1000. Again, I don't like how the GT-1000 handles sag and resonance, and those things I usually keep at minimum. So if you look at my amp model, they're at -10, -8. They're just out of the way because I think the amp model itself without those settings just sounds so good. I was actually using the orange rock reverb for my default, but this one is probably going to be the one that I use. If I'm using this unit for performing, this is going to be the model that I'm going to use as my main. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. If you liked what you saw here, please consider dropping a like and then also hitting the subscribe button. We're going to be doing more amp models in the GT-1000, and I have an Ajax stomp that we're going to also dive into as well, and do more comparisons like I did today with the Friedman. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this tone, I really did. We'll be starting up live streams again after the first week of November as well, so that's when I'll be dialing in the tones, and hopefully I'll see y'all there. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, so thank you all so much. Hope to see you next time. Later.